What if most dementia care was just supervision in disguise, and the real breakthrough is in rewriting the journey? Hi, I'm your host Alexandria, and I'm very excited for this video today. In this video, I sit down with Rylee Pellegrino, the Chief Operating Officer at Cove Concierge, and we talk about redefining dementia care. Keep on watching. When agencies say they are providing dementia care, what are they actually providing? And also, what are they avoiding?
There are so many answers to this question, and I think oftentimes people look at dementia care as just having a body present. So often you'll come in and see certain sitters or caregivers sitting on their phone and just making sure that someone with exit-seeking tendencies isn't just going to walk out the room. But what they're really missing is the true interaction that you're doing with the person experiencing cognitive decline to really start firing those neural pathways again, to really ensure that they're living a life well lived versus just being safe, because safe doesn't always mean feeling fulfilled.
What is fundamentally broken about the traditional supervision-based model of senior care?
I love that you asked that. There are, again, so many issues, and I think that when it really comes down to senior care and dementia care specifically, it is such a fragmented system. You have someone who is, let's say, an untrained sitter working with an untrained family caregiver, working with a memory care community that has 60 clients, has no idea what's going on back and forth. There's no real understanding of what's happening moment to moment, day to day. And in that span of time, there are so many things that can really clue you in into what this person's actually experiencing to better acknowledge what kind of medication changes they needed, what kind of stimulation changes they need. And I think that that's what people always forget. So often you'll see these care communities tout themselves as the best in the business. Oh, we have these individualized programs. But when you go in on a random day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you walk in and everyone is all together, zoned out, watching Little House on the Prairie. That's not dementia care. Real dementia care is much more hands-on, and I just have not seen that be something that exists. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that not everyone can give that care. Not everyone's capable or well equipped, and there is also a staffing shortage to find really good qualified people.
I feel like that's a huge topic for, everywhere, but especially what I'm hearing with different senior living communities, all different types of, it's hard to actually get enough staff to do what we want to do.
And I think when families are, let's say, looking to place their loved one into memory care, which I always say is a last resort, but I think instead of touting themselves as, oh, we have all this special programming and we use the GEM model and we use this model and that model, instead of saying that, acknowledge that they don't have enough support, drop their prices down a little bit, and allow families to bring their own outside support, like someone like Cove, who does all the care management, who does the care partnering, and who also establishes a memory wellness program for them based on their lived history, based on their family dynamics, and based on their diagnosis. Because how you go throughout the day, if you have the behavioral variant of FTD, and how you go through the day if you have mixed dementia, let's say Alzheimer's and vascular, your days are going to look very different. So these communities are never going to be equipped to be able to give your loved one, especially in the early to mid stages, the care they deserve. And going into the later stages, they still need that one-on-one connection, because humans are just not meant to sit idly by.
And then what does it mean to rewrite the dementia journey instead of just quietly managing the decline?
There are a lot of aspects, I think, to the dementia journey for a husband or a wife or a son or daughter going through it with their parents or loved ones that they manage the decline by bringing in, let's say, a CNA who gives them their Depends, and they give them, the chucks, put it on the bed, put on a TV show, and just make sure that they are contained and managed. And that's the same model when you're going into these assisted livings and memory care communities. But when you are actually managing the dementia journey, we are talking about orchestrating a life well lived. And I think the word flourished and well lived don't often find themselves into dementia care. And I never want to take away from how horrible this journey is for so many people and
Yeah.
how sad and tumultuous it is. But when we're talking about the person living with cognitive decline, which is where my work focuses on, I look at these people and I say, what a brilliant life story they've had. What a family they've raised. What kind of hobbies do they have? What kind of dogs did they grow up with and loved? And you take all those little pieces and you can really weave a life for them, even though they're kind of losing themselves a little bit. And I think in turn, that helps relieve some of that grief and guilt that family caregivers feel, because you're able to see happiness come back out instead of sitting with the frustrations of having these repetitive questions, having these repetitive behaviors. And we come in and we help all of that. And how many times have you heard of someone going to a neurologist that they absolutely hate, but they don't know how to find another one? Or
Yeah.
how often do you see someone becoming incontinent and you don't ever think to get a UA ordered? There are so many small parts of dementia care that are overlooked and forgotten about because the system is just so fragmented, that having the understanding that it's not about managing decline, but it's about weaving a new life is the most important part. And again, it's not to say that the dementia journey isn't awful for people involved, but it's about trying to see what still exists and finding new ways to develop a beautiful life for someone.
I feel like it's a perspective plays a huge part in that. Obviously, having a loved one or someone you know end up living with dementia, it's a very scary, sad, angry type of, thing to go through and have happen. But also doesn't mean that like, okay, well then their life is done, so let's just, give them basic care. It's like they're still a person and they can still connect, they can still engage. Dementia care doesn't have to be just like, okay, we're giving up on life. It's not about that.
Absolutely. And I learned something several years ago. There's a difference between have to and get to. And
Yes.
I think in our work at Cove, our team has a very get to outlook on life. Oh, I get to go out and I get to plant flowers today with my client, or I get to go and advocate for this client at the doctor's office. I get to go and read through this clinical documentation with a neuropsychiatrist to help develop a better care plan on the medical side for this client, instead of, oh, I have to call the doctor. I have to go and buy new undergarments. I have to go and
Yeah.
buy new chucks. I have to change the sheets. So yes, it's a perspective shift, but I also think it's a shift in acknowledging what your limits are, because so much of the caregiving support world is geared towards, all right, you're going to have to do all of this stuff now, and these are how you're going to do it. Here's a million pamphlets and a million phone numbers. And really, no one is told that there are different avenues. And admittedly, there's not a lot of agencies or companies doing what we do where it's more of a holistic model. And that is a huge flaw in the system that, again, going back to fragmented, people are not equipped to be 20 people at once, especially
Yeah.
when they're living their own lives with their own families and their own jobs.